Hey, wouldn't it be cool if in Fusion, when you're designing, you could round off edges, you could polish it up and make it look nicer. You can even make your parts stronger by reinforcing those internal edges for 3D prints or for CNC. Let's talk about the fillet tool. In Fusion, you can hit F on your keyboard, or you can come up to the modify command and choose fillet. Over on the right, there's a dialog. We're going to talk about all the different tools available and what these settings mean and how they can help you get the fillet that you need. But we'll start really simple by choosing an edge. And there's a handle or dialog here. We're going to choose this edge, and you can drag this handle and create a huge fillet. And this is my first tip, is fillets don't have to be really simple, small finishing touches. They can actually make significant changes to your model if you want them to. On the right here, constant is probably going to be the one you're going to use the most often, and it's going to be helpful for creating this consistently round fillet. If I hit this plus sign, it allows you to add additional fillets in the same command. This one is already being applied at, I think, 43, something huge. We can now click this back edge and do a very small fillet of 3. And so the preview reinstates or comes back, and now we're seeing the large fillet and this smaller one in the corner. If I click OK, both of those fillets are solved, but they're solved in the timeline as one fillet. Now, what's interesting is if you had a large timeline with lots of features, if you click on the model on the specific fillet, it should put the 3 marks above the fillet. If I click this same fillet over here, it should still mark the same one. So if you go back to edit, you can edit either of these fillet values here. You also can remove them with the little X. So it's with the X is going to remove each one at a time. I was just showing you how to select edges. Let's hit fillet F on the keyboard. I'm going to select a face this time. And what that does is it actually grabs all the edges that make up this face, and we can drag the handle or put in a value, and you'll see that the fillet is being applied to all edges of this face. On this idler arm, I'd like to add a fillet. When I select an edge, by default, you probably have the tangent chain selected, and this can be kind of a gotcha. I'm going to turn it off for just a second. When I select this edge, it's only going to grab one edge, and now it's going to try to add that fillet to just this one edge. But when you do the tangent chain and it's selected, what it's trying to do is grab anything that also has tangency in the edge you've selected. So for example, this is not actually tangent when it comes into this hard edge here. This is from this arc to that edge, that's tangent, right here to there. So if we were to select this edge, it actually gives us both because there's tangency, but not the bottom. But don't let that stop you. If you do select all of the edges holding Command or Control, you can apply the fillet. What if you wanted to add a fillet to everything? You can simply box select it and then hit F on the keyboard, and it's selected all 34 faces, including all their edges. If I put in a value of 1, there's going to be a lot of fillets. Right? It's adding them all in here. That's great. And there's actually a better fillet for this. If you want to apply a lot of fillets at once without having to go through and select kind of section by section, you can come up and choose the fillet command and toggle to the rule fillet. And I want to select all these edges, and I'm going to do 1 millimeter. What's cool about this is you have the option to choose all of the exterior rounds and internal fillets, the external rounds only, or the internal fillets only. If I choose the rounds, you'll see that it's only solving those and not the internal. So it does give you a little bit more control in an automated fashion on adding fillets quickly. Hey, if you'd like a cheat sheet to go along with this video, I know there's a lot of options and a lot of tools I'm talking about. So if you'd like to grab that, it's free. Just go download it from this link right here. One thing I want to remind you of, if someone sends you a file, let's say it's a step file, a SolidWorks file, Inventor, it doesn't really matter. When you import this into Fusion, what you'll get is a imported body. That's all you're going to get in your timeline. It's going to be difficult to edit any existing fillets that you might have, and here's the workaround. Not only can you just hit Q on your keyboard and increase faces or decrease, remove faces, you can simply select a fillet, hit delete on the keyboard. It will fill back that material for you. Now, if you add a fillet, it will add this to your timeline. Let's make sure it's constant, set the radius we want, and now it's adding this as a feature that's fully editable in your timeline. One thing I mentioned in another video is that you can use fillets to reinforce and strengthen your materials. So let's say as we're going to do this as a 3D print, this is the base. I want it to be a lot stiffer. I would simply come in and add a fillet into this internal corner, and it's actually going to add material and make it stronger. I don't know what it is. I always think of fillets always removing material, but this is a really quick way that you can reinforce and strengthen 3D prints and other designs. In a previous video, I mentioned the sketch fillet. And what this allows you to do is in the sketch, round off all these edges. And I think this still has its place, and I'll use it when I need to, especially when I'm using, for example, lofts and complicated sweeps and things. I might add the fillet before. But where I really like the feature fillet is that on this model, not only can we add fillets to all the edges and faces like we've been talking about, we can select everything at once and add these fillets. What I also like is its editability and the ability to see it happen on the 3D model live. So I can adjust this kind of on the fly. And when I'm done, I can come down and find the feature that I created and I can edit it, or I can suppress it, which temporarily gets rid of it. And it's also following that basic rule of thumb that simpler sketches and more features in your timeline, it's going to create a model that performs better, meaning it solves faster and behaves better. Coming over to the fillet command, I'd like to round off one of these edges. Now, what if you wanted to fillet this so that it was perfectly round and there was a smooth arc transition between them? It's kind of difficult. I can't seem to get it right with two fillets. Exactly. Don't use it that way. If you want a nice smooth transition, that's where the full round fillet is a perfect fit. You can start by simply selecting the center face, and hopefully it solves the way you want. That's not quite what I had in mind. So I'm actually going to say that's the center. This is face one. I'm going to hold Alt or Control, make sure that it's in the right dialog, select the dialog, select that, and then go to the bottom dialog, and we'll choose this bottom face. It's rounding that, giving us a nice, perfect, smooth transition. I don't have to come in and sketch this arc and cut this away. The fillet tool will do it for me. Now, what about if I wanted to do all of these arcs? Let's try that. That sounds kind of cool. We'll go to fillet with the search command this time, and we'll go to full round fillet. Select this top face as the center. This is the side, holding Command or Control. Make sure side 2 is selected. Come over and select this side face, and it rounds them completely and very quickly. One challenge you're going to bump into with fillets is when you have a transition between angled faces that have a very different angle. For example, these have a pretty steep face, and this is a 90-degree angle between these faces. So if I were to go to my fillet command, choose this one, even though the radius is 12, you'll see they have a very different solution in the width of the fillet based on these faces that it's solving between. And this tip comes from Matt Perez over at Everything About Design. I'm a huge fan of his channel, very cool content. And he mentions how there is a good way to solve this, and that's coming over to the dialog and trying the chord length. You'll notice that the width is identical now, and it's solving a nice smooth transition between them. So keep this one in mind when you need this nice seamless transition. So when I've created a fillet, I want to control how it's solving. You'll notice it has this kind of nice smooth tangency solving in between these two faces. If I go back to my fillet and play with this feature right here, or this setting called Tangency Weight, and we go all the way down to 0.1, it loses most of its tangency and it's almost like a chamfer. So you have some control here to introduce kind of how you want this tangency to solve between the faces. As I go up, you're going to see more and more tangency introduced. And as I get to 1, it's back to that value. And if I go above that, 1.5, you can see it's raising it and creating this kind of bulge. I want to create a fillet in this corner between these 3 edges. When I place this value, you're going to notice this default corner behavior. Now, what you can do is come over and try a different corner type. So let's choose Setback, and you'll see that it creates this higher level of curvature. I believe this is the G2 curvature option, and gives you a pretty different experience in the corner. Another fillet type that's going to give you even more control is the variable fillet. When I'm going to choose fillet and come over to the dialog, make sure variable is selected. I'm going to select this flat edge. By default, you can basically add a value at the beginning and the end. Let me show you that. So I drag this in a little bit. This is going to be the ending, which you can see in the dialog here, that it's at this 3.2 value for the radius, and that's the complete, the ending of this edge. The start is at 0, so it's transitioning from 0 to 3.2. If we make the start, let's say starting at 1, it's going to just start a little thicker at the bottom and work its way up. You can introduce more radius points. So if you come over and just click near the fillet, this red dot will wake up. This red dot lets you put in more control points so that you can introduce changes throughout. What if we wanted to create a variable radius where it was kind of skinny in the middle? We could do the start at 2 and the ending at 2, and you can just leave this point in the middle at a smaller value. We could say that it's 0.25 or 0. 0 works, but you can, now we have control over this where we can increase and decrease the radius throughout. And variable radius is not limited just to simple lines and edges. You can do this perimeter edge that happens to be a spline. You can control and create the control points on this as well.